now transition to coverage of the State of the Union address. That is scheduled for 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. And we are going to welcome Virginia Tech political communications expert Cayce Myers to the show now. Cayce, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. How are you on this Tuesday?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and it could not have come at a better time because tonight is, of course, the State of the Union from President Donald Trump, the impending rebuttal from Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, and it comes during a period of intense unrest here in the United States of America over the course of especially the last 6 months. I want to start, before we dive into content, I want to ask about tone. In terms of your expectations, what do you expect from President Trump when it comes to his approach to this particular State of the Union, with his approval rating across many different polls sitting much lower than it has at previous points in either of his two terms?
Well, the State of the Union, I think, for President Trump is similar to what we see with other presidents in that it is typically an opportunity to list achievements. And so a lot of times these speeches have a unifying theme about the strongness of the State of the Union, but then there is a laundry list of accomplishments or initiatives that the president wants to achieve. So I'd imagine that there will be some of that in the speech. Now, the tone depends. I mean, I'm looking at, a situation tonight where the Supreme Court, which has ruled against Trump on the tariff issue, many of its members may be sitting down front, right in front of him, and maybe there'll be targeted comments. That just sort of remains to be seen. We also have seen with President Trump in the past some give and take between the audience and the president during these speeches. Don't know if that's going to happen tonight or not, but we'll certainly be watching for it.
And it's interesting, we talk about listing achievements. At this particular point in time, a lot of the issues that maybe President Trump has been seen as strong on in the past are in the midst of lagging approval numbers when it comes to immigration. That has always been a strong point for President Trump, but we are in the midst of, obviously, a lot of headlines and controversy when it comes to immigration and customs enforcement, when it comes to tariffs and the economy. We just saw the Supreme Court strike down his ability to spread those tariffs in the way in which he did. That has been a major initiative of his first term. Foreign policy may have been something that he was willing to tout when he, in the midst of him creating a ceasefire in Gaza, but now much of our, a large portion of our Navy sits outside of Iran with questions surrounding that situation. So when you look at achievements that maybe typically he would list or that he would illuminate during a speech like this, with the time frame being what it is, with where some of those things are at in terms of public perception that we have seen from polls, do you expect it to look different than maybe a typical President Trump list of achievements would? I don't know if that question is overly reductive, but you can take it where you want.
So I think that clearly what the president is going to do tonight is try to reframe some of these issues that you just mentioned, particularly around the economy. I think that you're going to hear a lot about how President Trump's initiatives have increased, the economic situation in the country for the better. I think you're hear him talk about tax cuts that he implemented. I think you're also going to hear about foreign policy, certainly. And of course, I think that there's going to be kind of an attempt to create political narrative that is positive. How he handles that on the tariff issue, how he handles that on Iran, I think is going to be nuanced. I also think that it's going to be something that is going to certainly present an image on his part of success. Now, we're going into a midterm election, and so this is an early kind of kicking off, I think, for what maybe the issues are going to be in 2026. Certainly, the economy is going to be a big issue in a midterm election, as it always is. And there is a certain element of midterms as a referendum on the president. So I think that this is an opportunity for him to maybe regain the narrative, maybe explain some of the things that he is accomplished. Again, I would also look at maybe some of these extemporaneous aspects of his speech. I mean, Trump is best when he is off script sometimes because he has an energy that he derives from the audience. And when he is going off of a script from a teleprompter, sometimes his delivery is flatter. So again, I would be looking at all of that tonight, and certainly there is a huge political dimension to this speech in terms of not just President Trump but Republicans in general.
And, we talk about the other side of the aisle. Many Democrats have said that they will abstain or they will not be attending this particular State of the Union. I've seen reporting that says no shows expected to be anywhere between 50 and 100 Democratic officials not going to the State of the Union. How is that something that is extremely rare? Is it even unprecedented, or do you have experience sort of observing that in the past from the opposite party to the speaking president?
There have always been individual members who may not attend for various political reasons, but this is a coordinated event, I think, that's unlike any that we've seen before. And part of it is there is a media strategy to this. And so in the last joint session of Congress where President Trump spoke, it was a raucous event. And we had people back and forth speaking with the president. There was handheld signs. And I think Democrats saw that as maybe not effective, not necessarily helpful for their kind of political point. And so we've seen this sort of strategy emerge in 2026 where it's going to be this sort of silent resistance and then this alternative event that has been organized around different talking points within the Democratic Party. We also have a response speech, the Democratic response speech. Now, that is very traditional in the sense that has been around since the 1960s, although it's taken various formats. But that's a means to sort of counter the State of the Union and its points and maybe present a counterpoint to some of the issues that were raised.
And of course, that counterpoint will be presented tonight by Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger. What does it say first about the Democratic Party that they have chosen Governor Spanberger to make that rebuttal?
Well, I think it's a strategic move. And I think that what Spanberger represents is a centrist Democrat who was able to outperform in 2025. And she presents an image, I think, for Democrats of saying this is what we are representing as a party. There could even be a type of there and already is chatter around her electability at a national level as well. Now, this speech that she's giving is notoriously cursed in some ways. There have been many politicians that have given the response and that have been, the delivery has been awkward, or there's been gaffes. There's been moments where the speech didn't go well. So if you look back at the history of the speech, sometimes there is a sort of an underwhelming moment in these responses. And part of that is due to the fact that you had the State of the Union, which has all the pomp and ceremony of the event, and then juxtaposed against a speech that is given in a different format. So she's got a lot to do in that speech. And again, I think that it highlights her significance and really the kind of the larger message the Democrats are trying to present in 2026.
And you talk about them trying to send a centrist message by choosing Governor Spanberger. Would you say you were personally surprised that that is the route that Democratic leadership took?
I'm not necessarily surprised by it. I think Democrats have tried to figure out the best way to communicate an opposition to Trump, an anti-Trump, anti-MAGA kind of response. I think that certainly when you have a kind of a more central message, a centrist message, as it were, it maybe appeals to more voters. They, in 2026, also need to provide a kind of a coalescing around certain issues. And I think Spanberger is going to speak to that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the economy play a huge role in her speech tonight, and particularly around the issue of affordability, which has been top of mind for politicians in 2025 and in 2026.
And of course played a huge role in her campaign. Affordability, really one of the central points of her campaign for governor, which of course we know was ultimately ended up being very, very successful. I've also seen, I know that in State of the Unions, the president has his own guests who will be in the building, who he will oftentimes highlight their achievements and their accomplishments and the relation those things have to their own presidency or to his own presidency. But I've also seen that Democratic lawmakers are bringing guests of their own. In this particular instance, it's been reported that will include those who have been negatively affected by ICE activity. It will include those who are victims of abuse at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein or the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, at least. But where does the spotlight come from when it comes to the guests of Democratic representatives? That's not something that is a part of the proceedings in any way. Is it simply to send a message to the president? Is it something that will get press coverage either way, which leads to certain reporting and headlines? I mean, where does the role of guests of those in attendance come into the proceedings here?
Guests certainly are a part of the political strategy, the larger political strategy. And I think that there's certain press coverage, maybe attention to various issues. Maybe there's also a message there for President Trump. The president's guests typically involve people who are kind of unifying figures that where you maybe have an ovation given by both Republicans and Democrats. And so one of the things within the State of the Union is not just the speech itself, but also the optics of who's clapping and who's not, and those kinds of moments. And one of the things that the State of the Union even tries to do is present issues to where, the opposition has to applaud for because of the optics of the speech and the way that the viewers may perceive that. But certainly these guests are a unique factor, and I think they're meant to kind of highlight a political issue that may resonate with voters and may be picked up later on in these rallies that Democrats will have tonight and also in the future going into the midterms.
And then, of course, also in the room, as you mentioned right off the top, those Supreme Court justices, based on the reaction that we've seen to that decision, do you expect them to be openly addressed by President Trump during his speech based on what we know of his past State of the Unions and the reaction thus far to that particular ruling?
Well, it's hard to predict what will actually happen, but I do think the issue will be addressed. I would be surprised if it is not, and particularly tariffs will be addressed. Whether or not there's a direct addressing of the Supreme Court justices themselves, I don't know. That has happened before, where there has been criticism of the Supreme Court in a State of the Union address, even prior to President Trump. However, that the Supreme Court justices present a unique kind of factor because they are there in a nonpartisan role. They do not oftentimes applaud. They do not show emotion. They're not part of the kind of the partisan political context. Yet they are there representing a third branch of government. So that may be a unique aspect of this speech, and certainly I would not be surprised if there is not some sort of commentary by the president, or maybe even direct commentary to the Supreme Court justices themselves. But again, we'll wait to see if that transpires.
And it's so interesting to hear, as someone who pays such close attention to these things and analyzes events like this, it's so interesting to hear the way you speak about the State of the Union, almost all the nuances that are involved, all the subtleties that are involved, the purpose behind each and every topic that is addressed and how it's addressed, almost to the point where it's a performance as much as it's a speech. The goal of eliciting certain reactions, both from the viewing audience and the audience in the room. I'm wondering, is there a moment from a past State of the Union that stands out to you as one that has kind of just always stuck in your mind, whether it can be something that is more on the serious side or something that you just remember because it was, elicited some other emotion?
Well, there have certainly been State of the Union addresses and addresses to the joint sessions of Congress that are not State of the Union that stand out. Famously, in President Obama's State of the Union after ACA was a political issue, we had a member of Congress shout at the president from the floor, and that stood out as a moment that's really a breach of decorum. Now we see that exchange become normalized in some respects, but certainly the speeches themselves have standout moments. Now, it's interesting in this media world that we live in today. This will draw a large audience, a collectively large audience to watch, but we'll also see these aspects of the speech clipped into viral content potentially that will then be placed on social media and then utilized by both parties in their political ads and political purposes. So I think that there's just such resonance with this and such a collective kind of viewership of this, that outsized media event and such an important event. And again, some of the statements that are made and some of the things that transpired during this speech we will see repackaged again in the political cycle of 2026.
And you bring up a great point. In a modern media landscape where there is so little in terms of the monoculture, you have NFL football, and then you've got the Oscars, and then that's essentially it for things that a large portion of America gathers around the TV to watch. But the State of the Union does typically rate up near some of those larger events. But then at the same time, you have that dichotomy of so many people will only view this speech via snippets, via social media. When you examine social media's impact in terms of interpretation of the State of the Union, do you see it as more of a benefit because more people will at least be exposed to some of the comments, or do you see it as more of a detriment in that you are now at the will of the editor of those videos and those clips? I mean, do you view that in a certain way, the social media lens of the State of the Union address?
Well, it certainly is a polarizing dimension to it, because what happens is that you have a speech, and that may be something we look at tonight, like how long does this speech actually go? It may go for a very long time because President Trump has traditionally spoken longer in some of his national addresses and public addresses. But again, people not watching the full length may get a snippet of 30 seconds or something, and that encapsulates an entire issue. And then that frames that political issue for a wide swath of people. So again, I would be looking at this from a standpoint of, what is the sort of the snippets that become viral? What are these kind of tense exchanges at times, or what are some of these kind of soundbite moments within the speech that can be repackaged and repurposed by both Republicans and Democrats? How that affects people's perception is significant as well, because people we know don't necessarily look at context and nuance. They look at the larger they look at these smaller snippets rather than the larger body of work, and then say, okay, this is what this political issue is, and this sort of soundbite politics. But that's really the world that we live in.
And then last question for you, is there any one topic that you are most interested to see how it's framed?
I think the economy and the tariffs are going to be very interesting, and how this Supreme Court case is going to be framed, and just how acrimonious that may be as a topic for the president. I think that just given on the heels of this Supreme Court decision, and given the presence of the U.S. Supreme Court there tonight, it'll be interesting to see how that transpires.
All right, Mr. Myers, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your insight in giving us, kind of helping us peel back the layers of what this address means, why it's so significant, and what to expect. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the night. I know it'll be a busy one for you on into tomorrow, but we appreciate you taking a little time to hang with us here on Live Impact News.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Cayce. That was a great breakdown from Cayce Myers there. The State of the Union, as you can kind of sense just from talking to Cayce, significant in a number of different ways, right? The presentation, the content, and then how it's interpreted by the audience, how the rebuttal goes with Governor Spanberger, how that is interpreted, how it's disseminated via social media, of course, the kind of a new aspect of society. Anytime that there's an event that is this significant, you then have the ensuing social media breakdown and interpretation. So a lot goes into this, and it'll be interesting to see what it's like in the room, and then how the viewing public reacts afterwards. So just awesome to have Cayce on. Again, political communications expert from Virginia Tech University.